Welcome back to the 1090 podcast. We are honored to have Kelly back. We are doing part two. And, you know, I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's apparent if people listen to the 1090 podcast consistently, but just a reminder we're kind of winging it over here. We're not pros. I never wanted to be a podcaster. So we're just, we're trying to deliver a podcast every week. So we're very inconsistent with a lot of things, but I wish I could do part twos with everyone, but I feel like with your story, we didn't really get to the physical pain enough. We didn't get to your 90% enough. And one of the goals that we do have with the 1090 podcast is we just want everyone to feel heard and they have time to tell their story however they want to say it. And we just listen and hold space, and then hopefully other people that going through grief can connect to it. Anyway, excited to have you back.
Thanks.
We were joking the first time. I mean, it's very nervous to come on. We're talking about heavy stuff, and you made a joke last time. I should have brought some wine. It would have loosened me up a little more to talk. And round two, we brought the wine. We did. It's 2:00 in the afternoon, but we don't care. We got the wine out. And then I'm just going to have to tell the story. But I'm pouring the wine, trying to be a gentleman. And I'm a whiskey guy. I don't know what wine. So I'm pouring this wine, and I overdid it. You and Ryan both looked over to the glasses I poured, and you're like, whoa. And I'm like, oh, is that a lot? I don't know. So we get a little tipsy. That's on me. I'm sorry, but.
Do you pour that much whiskey in your glass?
Oh, man. There once was a time I did. I do much better now, but the whiskey goes down burning and it feels good. But okay, anyway. Kelly,
Great. Cheers.
Cheers to podcast number 2. So Kelly, where do you want to pick up? I just, like I said, I want to hear more about the daily battle with the physical pain, because I remember I asked you, and I don't know if we were recording or not, but I'm like, so how's it been? 28 years later, and you're like, well, the spiritual thing and the grief is still hard, but the physical pain.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man,
the physical part, it's always there. I can forget about Brent for, a couple days and it doesn't go through my brain, but every minute of every day, I'm reminded I'm in a wheelchair and, I hurt and I don't want to be this way, but I don't have any other choice. So that's always with me.
How do you deal with that on a day-to-day basis?
I think when I wake, I'm like, all right, I got to make this day a good day. I can't just, I have to make an active choice to make it a good day. Or I could just lay in bed all day, which I do sometimes. But
yeah, I wanted to ask you that because we were kind of talking about this at the beginning today. When people, because I told you, you're an inspiration to me, and you're like, you just didn't really appreciate it at all. And then you're like, what, how do you feel when people tell you that? And I'm like, yeah, I hate it, actually.
Yeah,
and
I hate it too.
Yeah, and I feel like there's nothing really good about it, or nothing to celebrate, really. And I remember when I do my public speaking, I tell the story about my brother, Race. He went the distance in this fight at Madison Square Garden. And I got a lot of responses from people who are going through daily physical pain that I didn't really think about to connect with, but they're like, man, this video meant a lot to me because I'm dealing with this chronic daily pain. And I wanted to have you back on again. I just have so many questions about it. Just when you, at the very beginning, did you just try to numb it, run away from it? Take me back to the beginning. You're dealing with Brent's passing. You survived this plane crash, you were a very active person. Like you were very active with your body, and all of a sudden that's taken from you too. Can you take us back to the beginning, like the therapy, and how did you cope with that at the beginning?
Well, I laid flat for 3 months. Well, I was in ICU for a couple of weeks, and then laid flat for 3 months, and then was back in the hospital for another month. Even learning to sit up again, to be elevated, I could only do it like for 20 minutes, and then I'd have to lay back down because your body's not used to it. I would just pass out and have super low blood pressure. And so I really fought that a lot, having the energy to do anything. When I left rehab and went back to learn how to live, to the hospital, they have a little apartment thing that you can, stay in and figure out how to do kitchen stuff and bathroom stuff. And, they take you and do to a grocery store. Let's teach you to shop because, you can only reach things this high.
But your whole life's different now. Yeah.
Totally different. And on top of that, I had a traumatic brain injury, which left me not being able to remember a thing.
Yeah.
I had a doctor that did cognitive therapy with me now to find out how my brain's working. He said, okay, I'm going to tell you this little story. When I get done, you tell me everything that you heard. So he's like, I don't remember the story. The cat was in the house and it saw a mouse and it chased it around.
And then you just have to like repeat all every detail you remember.
Yeah. And I said, I couldn't remember anything else.
Oh, man.
Nothing. And so I had to really practice and learn how to even listen again.
So not just the physical body, but you're trying to get your...
Yeah.
And then like, you have to have like the will and desire to like put the effort in for therapy, right? Like, and then you're also dealing with Brent passing, which would just rip out, at least from my perspective, that would just rip out my desire to even want to live. Like, did part of you just like, I don't even know if I want to do this?
Well, I chose to live because of Kristen, my daughter, but all I really dealt with was Brent's passing. I didn't really deal with, I'm unable to do this and that. I kind of went into auto mode, and whatever the physical therapist was telling me to do, I would do. But Brent was on my brain and in my heart every second because I just was so sad, so sad. And I went through just sadness for a couple years. I never got mad at him. It wasn't my fault. I got mad at myself, and I went through all those phases. Yeah. And you go through all those phases every day.
Can I ask
many times a day.
How long was the phase that you were mad at yourself? Because I'm very much in that
Still
phase.
Mad at myself.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because when we were landing, I had that voice say, don't land here. And, and when that was happening, I was thinking, certainly Brent and Steve, they hear that.
No, like being raised LDS, this makes perfect sense. Yeah. Like I understand that thought process, why you would think that.
Yeah, I'm still mad at myself, but not to the point that it ruins my day or has ruined my life. Got to accept it at some point. I have to accept that I didn't listen to that voice saying, "Don't land here." I don't blame. Excuse me. I don't blame Steve. I don't blame Brent. But I'm wondering, why in the hell didn't they say, there's a voice in my head?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've mentioned this a few times throughout the podcast, but the shame and guilt thing is so weird because when you're talking to anyone else's shame and guilt, you're like, you don't need to feel bad. You're
Right?
crazy.
Right?
But then
Yeah.
when it comes to you, you're like, yeah, I'm a piece of shit. Like,
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that works that way, but it
But
does.
when I finally left the hospital and went home, we were building a house. While I was in LDS hospital, we started building a house, Kristen and I. And when I got out of the hospital, we had to move into an apartment till our house was built.
How long would you say you were in the hospital for completely?
I was there about 5 months, 4 or 5 months, 4.5. Most of it was sleeping because I was medicated, and sleep was my respite. You know, I could dream about Brent. I could go back to that point where you almost die and then you pull yourself back, and I just slept a lot. But I also had so much support from my family and my friends, and without them, I would have killed myself. Absolutely, 100 times over.
Yeah, that's what I tell people too. Is like one reason I'm here being able to talk to you guys is my family and friends.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't have that, and
Right.
they end
They
up dead
don't.
or homeless or eventually both of those things. But
Or they're just a normal person that, you know, they don't have a community. I had a huge community at work, and they were so loving, and they organized my friends to come see me every day and give me lunch for a week. And then my friends would rotate, or they came on every Monday. And so I had somebody there twice a day, every day, just saying, hey, how you doing? You know, it's good to see you.
Do you think that helped you? Like, okay, like I'll try therapy. Like these people are coming to see me. Like I owe it to them to at least try.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. Like, well, the reason I got into speaking, the reason I gave my first speaking thing was so many people reach out to me, and I just didn't do a good job of responding to all the messages. And so I'm like, I want to give back and say thank you. And that's part of the reason I did is I received so much help. And that's another thing, like back to like when we get comments of like you're an inspiration, it's like, no, because big reason why I'm still here is other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that ties into the whole we is greater than me thing that I love so much. Like,
well, since I met you, I've been listening to all your episodes and binging, in fact. I'm like, I never thought of it that way, or looking at shame, or Destiny's poverty trauma. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Just so much, so many different types of trauma and grief. And yet every person in this world has some sort of thread connecting them to somebody else.
That's what I love about the podcast.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it took away my why me.
Right.
Because, like, Mason, you're not special. Like, everyone has it bad. Like,
everybody has
people have it worse than you.
We could walk out that door and grab the first person that got out of a car, and you could have a really good podcast.
That's why I think I've said that before. Like,
have you?
I could just knock on any door, like, hey, come be on my podcast. Yeah. Like, what's your story? He's like, yeah, like, and whatever the horrible thing is. And I feel like why I like podcasting is like, don't tell me everything happens for a reason. Don't tell me it's okay. Don't tell me the weight of my grief is lighter than it actually is. Just tell me it's really heavy, and then I'll try to carry it. I will. I'll do my best. But the minute people are trying to like make it lighter for me, it turns me off and it shuts me down. Like, this is really hard, man. Don't tell me it's not. Don't tell me it'll be okay, because it's not okay today, and it hasn't been okay for a really long time. So, but like connecting people, like with people like you, like just like, man, she's been doing this for 28 years and the physical pain and all this stuff. And it's helped me so much just meeting people. Yeah,
me too. Just listening to these people. Yeah. Or talking to friends or people that I meet. I mean, I don't tell my story a lot anymore, I think I've made the transition from traumatic person in a wheelchair to old lady in a wheelchair. And now people are like, I mean, they disregard old people anyway. So I don't really tell my story. I retired 6 years ago, and in the last 3 years, I kind of made my circle smaller so I could put more effort just into that circle. And I made a lot of new friends, and I didn't tell them right off why I was in a wheelchair, and nobody asked me. They were, respectful or whatever. And when I finally told one or two, they're like, "Holy shit, really?" But to me, it was like, "Yeah, I got this wheelchair, you know, and nothing's changed." But everything has changed because I'm not the same person I was 28 years ago. I really wish I could be, an adventurer again, but
Yeah.
For many reasons, I'm not interested in skydiving. I'm not interested in kayaking anymore. It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
I what was I gonna say?
You asked me what it was like when I first got out of the hospital.
Yeah.
I was super weak, although I was very strong because physical therapy, put you through a lot of, exercises and strengthening. But we lived in this apartment complex, and I'm like, okay, every night I'm going to wheel myself around this building, and it would take me forever to get around the building. And then I would have to go to bed. When I went back to work a year and a half later, I was doing 20 hours a week, and I would transfer into the car, which took about a half hour for me to do it myself. I would kick back my seat and sleep for 20 minutes. Then I'd drive to work, sleep for 20 minutes in the car, transfer out, lay underneath my desk for an hour and take a nap and get back in my chair and go home. That's what I did for 5 months, 6 months.
That sounds horrible.
It was horrible, but I had an employer that put up with it.
That's nice.
That was pretty awesome. But I eventually got stronger and stronger because I just had to work out, and it was just pushing. I'd go to the mall and push and push and push, like a mall walker. I would just push. Finally got strong enough, that I could work a full day. I was still battling head trauma. I used to be really good at my job, and now, I had to figure out other ways to remember all the details.
Yeah. What'd you do for your job again?
It was a corporate job, and I was in a communications department and, wrote materials for employees about their benefits.
I mean, you lost your husband. You're in a wheelchair. You could just collect money and just chill at home.
Yep.
So what the hell are you doing?
So I went on long-term disability, when my accident happened. I was out for about a year and a half, and I could have, I had a doctor that told me, don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not disabled. I was like, that's weird. But he was referring to, you can go on disability, you can go on Social Security, you don't have to go back to work. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't go back to work. And after a couple of years, I'm like, wow, I would have ended up the rest of my life making $1,500 a month. Excuse me, you can't sustain life on $1,500 a month. Went back to work and never looked back, really, and never considered that I would go out on disability ever. I would just work until I had to retire. It ended up that the company did a special plan for a bunch of employees to do early retirement and get a pension. And, so I took it. I was able to retire at 58 and not work until 67. And that's when my life really changed. My outlook on life really changed. Instead of going to work every day and working on projects and get the project done and make it happen and make this deadline and work with this person, I was really project oriented rather than relationship oriented. And once I retired and didn't have all those projects that I was working 80 hours a week at, I'm like, oh, I can have a relationship with a person rather than say, you owe me this deadline and this,
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I made my circle smaller, and I had to consciously put effort into having a good relationship with somebody and being nice to somebody and doing everything that I did with love. Where before it was just skill and, make it happen. And that kind of went into the rest of my life. But,
Yeah.
Now in the last 6 years, I was able to go, oh, I see the value of this person. And, I, be kind and ask about them and put effort into the love part of life.
The part that like truly matters.
Right. Instead of putting effort into the doing part, I put it into the loving part. And I wish I could have done that 30 years ago, I didn't realize that.
Still learning after all those years.
After all those years. And after listening to your podcast, it's amazing what people have been. People are so intelligent, and some of the quotes that come out of your podcast are amazing.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Yeah. The one way that helps me explain how I'm feeling is there's different parts of me. Like there's the anger guy and the sad guy and the guy that wants to be happy and all the guys. So sometimes some days I'm like really sympathetic. I'm like Courtney. I'm just really sympathetic. And I just like, wow, like you lost your dog. Like that must be so hard.
Yeah.
And then other days I'm like, your dog died? Like don't start with me.
That's your grief?
Like stop.
Dogs are really important. Right. They are.
And but that's just the reality of my brain. Like I'm sometimes just pure anger. Like fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Someone like you lose your husband. You're in a terrible plane crash. Now you're in a wheelchair. You have to go through the brain recovery, the physical recovery on top of the grief.
Yeah.
You still have pain daily from arms down.
Yeah.
How do you put up with... How do you do it? How do you live in the normal world of people bitching about gas prices and taxes and their kids are alive, but they didn't make the basketball team? Like, how do you do it?
I don't know. I feel like I'm just do it.
I think your small circle, like you're just connecting with your small circle. So you're not even really even... I think I'm just using my answer and just putting it on you. And that's projection, I think. But I think that's how I do it. Is like I'm with Sammy and Blue, sometimes Ryan and some other buddies, my sis. Like it's just I connected really well to when you said like my circle is pretty small, but it's strong and it's really helpful to me.
Somewhere along my path, I got a service dog, and the organization where I got my service dog from is a national organization, and they're the best service dog, organization in the world. And I got really involved in that, and I was president of the local chapter and volunteering and doing fundraisers for them and doing projects and, would public speaking and would go do demonstrations at schools and businesses.
No way. Did you like that? Did you like public speaking?
I did it. But I also had an amazing dog that I could do tricks and, people really, you bring a dog into the room.
Yeah.
And
her husband died. Who cares? Look at that dog.
Exactly. Right. And my first dog's name was Tadaki, and he was the dog of all dogs. I still cry over him passing because it was traumatic, not as traumatic as Brent, but you put so much love into that animal.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I had this big world. I was trying to talk to my daughter about my 90, and she's like, you had a big world and you reduced it down to a small circle. I'm like, that's exactly what I did. And that big world got me through many years. And then my small circle is getting me through many years. My family and JD, he's amazing. I mean, he chose me with this broken body and all the crappy things that come with it, because there's a lot of shit that goes on, literally shit that goes on. I have so many bathroom stories or not bathroom stories.
That's true love right there. Seriously, though, like a guy like JD. Yes. I mean, I feel the same way about Sammy. But I think people like that, I think they have a better understanding of what love is, maybe than most people. Or they're a special. Right. I don't know. When I put myself in Sammy's shoes, like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, and I worry about that, but yeah.
So this might be too much information, but it kind of tells you about the broken body. Anybody who's paralyzed at all loses function of their bowels and their bladder, because that is controlled by the very last vertebrae in your body. So now bowel and bladder are all timing. And if you don't get the timing right, there you are sitting in your wheelchair.
So like you have to go to the bathroom same time every day type of thing to like get the timing of your body, or what?
Yes, your body learns to do that, but it's not always the same. It depends upon what you eat. It's like your body, you have different function every day with those basic needs. But I had been seeing JD for maybe 3 months, and everything's happy, and I'm hiding all the crappy stuff with my body and my pain, and I'm just in love. I fell in love before I even talked to him, and we had gone to my dad's cabin, and it was a bad day for me, and I'm like, oh my God, I just messed my pants. That's awesome. And you don't know. You don't have any signals.
Wow.
It just happens. And that's the biggest frustration with people who are paralyzed. Their entire life is run by, is there a bathroom around? Do I have, a catheter? So we're at my dad's cabin, messed my pants, and I'm like, okay, how do I clean up? It's not an accessible house. And JD had to undress me and put me in the shower. And there I am, literally with shit from my belly button to my knees and bawling because this guy is taking care of me. And in the worst possible way.
Were you like bawling in the shower?
Oh, yeah. I'm in the bottom of the shower, just curled up, trying to clean myself up, and he crawls in the shower with me, totally dressed. And he's like, it's okay. I'm like, you don't want me like this. He's like, yeah, I do. I mean, he chose that. What kind of an awesome person is that? And it hasn't happened just once. It.
think, I mean, it's such like a, what's the right word? Like humiliating thing, like as an adult to do that. And then
Right.
for him to handle it in such a way to
Yeah.
make you, to not just clean up the mess, but to the way he made you feel.
Right. Yeah.
Because like this isn't like a once in a blue moon thing. Like if
No.
you're gonna be with her, this is
Yeah.
what you're gonna have to be doing.
Right.
And I can't relate to anything like that. The thing that comes closest to me was I remember when I had my first breakdown in front of Sammy. Like, you know, sometimes I just lose it, and that I'm like, oh shit, like what is this gonna do?
Yeah.
And she just held me and cried with me, and but man, that's nothing to what JD did. I mean, that's just a different level.
He makes my life possible.
Yeah.
I mean, without him and without my kids, I would be a shell of a person.
Yeah.
Sitting around watching TV, buying off QVC, you know.
Well, I think you can relate to this, but Blue saved my life literally. Like he kept me here, or else I would have killed myself.
Yeah.
But Sammy, like, I didn't know if I could receive love again, or like just be wanted for who I truly was, with all like losing a wife and the kids and Grace and Ryder, like, and just I think just feeling that love again was very it was mixed. Like I felt awful, like guilty, but then good.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just gonna. We were talking about the Christmas present thing. I'm just gonna tell it again real quick. But when me and Blue were wrapping Christmas presents this year, we were writing the tag like, "Who does the present go to?" And we were wrapping this present for Sammy, and he wrote "To Mom" from Blue, and it was just like. I think it was just a really good representation of grief because it was both. It was so bittersweet. It was like a heartbreaker. Like, oh, like I don't want you to forget about your mom, Courtney. Like, man, like Courtney's your mom, but it was like also so beautiful. Like Sammy is your mom too. Like she's in that role now and loves you like a mom, and it was so necessary and needed. But hard. It was, and that's what grief is. It's and that's what I thought when you were telling me about JD in the shower.
Yeah.
This is a terrible moment. This is so humiliating and all the things for you.
But
and
it's so wonderful.
At the exact same time.
So amazing. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about it on the podcast. Like this is a moment that you remember, and it's also beautiful. And I think when I have my good days and I'm in acceptance, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like it's awful, but there's good parts of it. And you just try to be grateful for the. Man, can we talk about gratitude?
Gratitude.
I've struggled with that one. How how do you do with that one? How long did it take you to get that back, or is that still a daily battle for you?
No, I think I've learned gratitude. Years ago, Oprah started gratitude journals, and
real quick before I'll let you dive into it. But like, I still feel this. Like, I feel like if I have gratitude, then what I'm saying is it's okay that it happened, and I never want.
Oh,
anyway, that's just kind of my struggle with gratitude. But I know it's also not true. Anyway, okay, take it over.
So years ago, I started doing a gratitude journal because it's really hard to find the good things about your day.
Yeah.
When I was in the rehab center laying on my back, I had a nurse, and I would just wallow in sadness, thank you, every day. And I had a nurse that came in and said, all right, we're going to deal with this. She took a notebook and she drew a line down the center of the notebook. And she said, I want you to tell me all the good things about your life. And so I had her write Kristen. And that was all I could come up with that was good, because I was laying there.
I love that so much.
And on the other side, she said, now tell me all the bad things about your day and about your life. And I filled the page,
Man.
with I hurt, I'm worthless. My hair is falling out. No one can ever love me again. I'll never love. I'll never have sex again. I'll just everything. And she would come in every couple of days and we'd do that. And on the good side, it was always Kristen at the top. And eventually I started to see, some good things about the bad things in my life. Like I would say a bad thing, all I ever see are nurses. Well, eventually I have these nurses who take care of me, and it moved to the good side.
Wow.
So I started to look at events and things in my life differently. And I continued gratitude like that for several years. And it was things like the contractor of my house is really good looking. Kristen and I used to pull up in front of the house and just watch the men work.
They're asking for it in that hard hat.
That's
and
right.
They're begging for it. They want it.
I wish they'd put that shirt back on.
Just catcalling them. They're begging.
So I had to teach myself gratitude again, what to be grateful for. And I've learned that if something is really bad in my life, I need to just switch it around and say, oh, well, that part of it is really good. And I also had a doctor or a nurse tell me, your body is broken, and right now it's not doing anything for you. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I just, absolutely nothing. And they said, maybe it was a spiritual guide. I had so many people just show up in my hospital room and say, could I pray for you? Or could I do this for you? Anyway, somebody along the way said, you need to bless your injury to be the best injury it can be. I'm like, what? And they would say, just, if you pray, if you meditate, just really concentrate on your injury to be the best it can be. So I started doing that, and my injury became not so much a burden. It just became something that I had. If it can be the best thing, well, maybe it's not going to hurt as much, or I don't know. It was such a weird concept to me to start out that way. No, but now if I hurt, I'm like, okay, let's just let that pain be the best pain it could be. And the best would be the least pain it could be. Or, maybe I need to work with my hands more, so I'm not concentrating on the pain so much, which is how I got into crafts and jewelry and everything, because if I sit idle, I can't function with the pain. I just have to have some sort of distraction. So my injuries became good injuries. I don't know if you can relate to that.
No, I think that's what I'm trying to say when I'm with the 1090 quote. Like, life's 10% what happens to you, and 90%. Like, what are we going to do with this pain?
So.
What are we going to do with it? It's here. How are we going to use it?
Yeah.
And I've said before, grief is a gift, and like part of me hates that still. Like, this is not a gift. That I think what you're trying to say and what I'm trying to say when I say that is, no, there is a gift, though. As bad as it is, like, if you accept it and lean into it and feel it, like, there's actually really cool things you can do with it.
Yeah.
And there's really beautiful things you can learn from it. But you can only get those gifts if you deal with the pain.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned, is when I try to run from the pain, I run from the memories of them, and I run from the joy we had, and I run from them.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And so it's such an odd thing, but I think what you're explaining is just the perspective shift that you can have. And once you shift that perspective, like, man, like,
that's exactly right.
Big strides can happen for you. I think the problem is with me anyway, is just the inconsistency. Like, I can only do that for 2 or 3 days at a time. And then I fall into like, this fucking sucks. This is unfair. I don't want this. And I mean, part of it's just, you're born into a new world almost. You're trying to you're trying to learn to walk again. Like, sorry, no offense to you, but like, and I just can't imagine that for you because, again, not just the loss, but the physical change that you had to adapt to. How would you describe like your daily pain? Like 1 through 10, where would you score that thing?
So I don't have back pain so much. I have nerve pain in my hands and arms. And if I stop to concentrate on it, it's a 10.
Wow.
And it will throw me into an anxiety attack, like immediately.
So I should not have asked about it. I should not have brought it up.
I just have to distract myself or move my hands or something. It's unbearable. It's like when your arm falls asleep, which is kind of insignificant. You shake it off, but it never goes away. And then it gets worse, and then it gets worse. And all you can think about is, my arm is asleep. And then you think, what do my legs feel like? And then concentrate on your legs. And then it's like, I can't stand that pain. I just have to distract myself and not even think about it. That's the only way I can get by. A lot of people medicate. I won't medicate because I got addicted to pain pills in the hospital, and it was sheer hell. And I won't do it again. Sometimes I'll take a Tylenol, to get
what
past
about
it.
Marijuana? You ever smoke marijuana?
I haven't. I'm not opposed to it.
What are you doing after this podcast today? You got some free time?
I do have some free time.
Well, shoot,
Okay.
you brought the wine. Maybe I can bring something to the table.
Okay.
No, you're such a badass though. Like, why? So what helps you deal with this chronic pain daily? God, the other shitty thing is, like, aren't you just laying in bed like, man, it's gonna hurt tomorrow and the next day, and man, because that's what I do sometimes. That's why I have to just take it one day at a time, or else it just gets depressing sometimes.
I still do.
Yeah.
One day at a time. And sometimes I'll wake up in the night with anxiety because my back itches or there's a little tingle somewhere and I can't stand it and I can't get to it. And I have to wake JD up and go, please, can you just scratch right there? I don't know. Distraction and try to ignore it.
You're very funny. You're very funny. Very dark, dry humor. Oh.
I might need a big pour on my wine again.
We can get. Do you think that helps you at all? Just like laughing sometimes. Do you think that helps you, or?
Yeah, I don't see myself as funny.
Really?
No.
Man, I get a kick out of you, man.
Thanks.
Maybe I just relate a lot, but I saw you. You drove. I saw you.
I do drive. Yep.
I just want to ask you. Maybe you can tell us a couple more things like most people don't think about, like being in a wheelchair daily, and then we can get to maybe jewelry.
Okay.
And start wrapping it up.
So when I was in the little apartment at the hospital, the physical therapists are like, okay, you're going to have a fun day today. Your job today is to go out in front of the hospital. There's a bus pickup right there. You can take UTA down. You and Kristen can go to a movie or go do whatever you want, as long as you figure out how to use public transportation. And I'm like, fuck that. Like, I don't need to use a bus. So Kristen and I, she drove me down to Nate Wade Subaru. She test drove a car, and I bought a car that day. I'm like, there's no freaking way I'm going to ride the bus. I mean, that would have been such a lifestyle change for me. And okay, I've got to put hand controls in this car. So the physical therapist gave me a 30-minute lesson on how to drive a hand control. And we went out in the parking lot of the hospital and drove around like I was 16 and figured
Driver's
out
ed all over again.
Yeah, figured out how to use that hand control. And
Wow.
so I use it JD hates to drive, and it's easier for me to get into the car on the driver's side because I can use the steering wheel. That's a whole other thing you have to figure out is body movements on everything you do. Transferring to the bed, you've got to do it as a system. You know, put your hand here, put your hand here, push up here. Otherwise, you're just kind of flopping around and you end up on the floor. You know, when I end up on the floor in my house, because I fall out of my chair every now and again, and it's usually transferring from a shower chair to my chair in the shower. It took me a couple of years to figure out the best way to get back in my chair. When you're not strong and you don't have any muscles above or below your neck, really, you can't really get back into the chair. So I just scoot myself through the house out into the garage where I've got a ramp, and I throw my chair down on the garage floor and I hop off the ramp and get into my chair. I don't know. That's I was really fortunate because my employer, when I went back to work, they bought me a new car.
Wow.
Yeah, they just, here's a bonus.
Man, your employer sounds like a good person.
They were
people
awesome. Yeah. Throughout the years, they've been very helpful in many, many ways. I don't know what else.
Can I ask you about the sex thing? Is that appropriate?
Yeah. I knew this would come up if I mentioned.
I like sex. It's a big part of life. I like sex. I know it's really uncomfortable to talk about.
So when I would do public speaking and we'd go to schools,
they would not ask you that.
The kids would ask, how do you use the bathroom? Okay. Well, I'll tell you that. So I have, I use what they call intermittent catheters, which means you do it yourself. It's not indwelling like in the hospital. You know, when you're laying in the hospital bed and they put a catheter in you, this is just a long plastic tube that's got a hole in one end, a hole on both ends, and you insert it into your urethra. And I'm glad I can't feel it, but that's and like I don't know how many times I've peed my pants. 2,000 maybe, a lot, because it's like, oh, damn, I shouldn't have drank that glass of wine. Here it is, you know. So I tell the kids, I have a catheter that goes in, and they're like, oh, okay. They've never experienced a catheter.
Yeah, kids are the best.
They're like, okay, whatever. And
I spoke at an elementary school once, and they're like, so who'd you love more out of your kids? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God, I know.
This is rough.
Right? Crowd. Yeah. And then every adult that I meet, the first thing that pops into their head is, how does she have sex?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm one of those people.
Kristen would say, she has it just like you. It hasn't closed up. So can you describe the feeling you have with sex?
It feels really good.
Yeah, you can't really describe it, right?
Yeah,
I can't either. I feel it a different way, and my body automatically does that. Makes it feel a different way. I don't know. I have no idea. Like you, what sensation are you feeling when you have sex. Can you describe that?
What I think it's I really love this conversation actually. I think it's different. I think sometimes it's very connection. It's about love and connecting with the other person in a very intimate way.
Yeah.
And then other times it just kind of feels really good and it's really fun. And I think it's both of those. I don't think it's one or the other all the time.
Mine is exactly the same way.
Yeah.
It's just that my body feels the sensation a little different now than it used to. But I don't remember what it felt like.
But would you say you enjoy sex still?
Like, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank God for that. So you're fine. Why are you even on our podcast then? You have nothing to complain about. You're good. Wow, you're a trooper. Thanks for answering some hard questions. Yeah.
You might lose some followers.
We're not too worried about that. Takes care of itself. I want to just kind of wrap up your 90%. We haven't even gotten to the jewelry yet. Should we get into the jewelry? That's what you're doing now, day to day,
That's what I'm doing now. The week that I retired, I always wanted to take a jewelry class, a silversmithing class, and I could never get into one, nor did I have the time to do it. So the week I retired, I signed up for one, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I get to use fire, and I dove right into it, just dove into it. So for 6 years, I've been doing jewelry.
You make really beautiful jewelry, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm just scrolling through your page.
Thanks.
My girlfriend's sister makes jewelry, so I'm not an expert, but I kind of look at it more than the average guy, maybe. And make. I think it's really beautiful stuff.
Thank you. I love it, and I've made a good community too.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I think my therapist told me once that he thinks a big part of life is creating something. Like humans, we have this desire to create. Yeah. And I think your jewelry, I think creating something is such an integral part of why we're here. And I think jewelry gives you that. Like despite everything you've lost, like you're able to create something on a daily basis. And I think that does a lot for people handling grief or just anything. It just gives you a sense of purpose and accomplishment. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what it gives you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine losing that. I mean, I think about it a lot because my body is older than the normal person's body. It's taken a hell of a lot of trauma. And 3 months ago, I broke my femur.
How long ago?
3 months ago. Oh. And I was doing yoga, of all things. I had my legs crossed, and I pushed on my leg too hard, and it snapped my femur in half. Jesus. Because I don't put pressure on my bones, so they're not strong. They're totally crumbling.
What's the pain like for you when you break?
No, I don't. I haven't felt it. Man. I was lucky. I went through surgery without feeling anything. But they put a rod through my leg, and it's the biggest bone in your body. It was trauma. Again, my hair is falling out. I'm exhausted. Yeah. So I'm trying to recover from that. But my bones, and it broke again. So my body is totally deteriorating.
Even though you can't feel the pain, your body's still going through a broken femur. And like the energy and stress
I thought it would be no big deal, but it's been surprisingly traumatic for me. So getting back to jewelry, I'm thinking, how long can I sustain being somewhat active and, being up for 12, 18 hours? And I'm like, I'm on the decline. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die early. I won't live to be 80.
They tell you that, or that's just kind of what you're hoping
When I first got hurt, I asked my doctor, okay, can you tell me how old will I be when I die? And she said, probably 65. And I'm 65. I'm like, okay, how will I die? She said, you'll either an infection, which I get urinary tract infections all the time because I'm inserting a catheter, you're inserting things into your body, or your bones will deteriorate and your organ, like your ribs will deteriorate and they'll puncture your organs. Okay, well,
she did not back down from
she
the question,
didn't, which I'm very grateful for.
I kind of appreciate that too. Yeah.
Well, my bones are crumbling, and my surgeon said, you just have soft bones. Expect that it's going to happen elsewhere. I'm like, all right, I'm going to die of bone density issues. So I'm telling my family, all right, I built up this really awesome studio. I have a jewelry studio that's better than most people's. JD's like, just good. Buy whatever you want, let's just. So I've got a really great one. I'm like, to my family, make sure you sell all this stuff for good money because it's, anyway. So I'm like, I have to create these 1,000 pieces I have in my head before I die, which could be, I don't know. I have to ask you now,
what's your view on death? How do you handle that daily?
Not afraid of it at all. Like I used to be afraid of it.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Because, growing up in a very weird Mormon culture, I've since learned that it's cult-like.
Me too. Yeah. Good word.
You have to be afraid if you sin at all. If you think a bad word, you're going to hell.
Yeah, God knows your thoughts. You're done. I know there's sick thoughts in your head.
There you go. Yes. He knows those thoughts. But, like in our previous episode, I got to talk to Brent and I asked him, is it true? He's like, no, it's all about love. You're doing great. It's just about love. So I'm not afraid of dying. I am sad that my family's going to have to grieve earlier, than somebody's dying at age 80. I'm having surgery this week. I could die in surgery.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not afraid of it at all. In fact, I kind of embrace it. I'm like, yeah, give me that.
It's so, life is so different when you don't fear death. It's so much better. It's so much better.
So much better.
It's so much better. And
yeah.
I think if there is a judgment day, I'm pretty sure God's going to be the only one sweating bullets on the seat. And we're all going to be like, what the hell was that? And he's going to be like, yeah, sorry, I tried. I don't know.
There's no judgment day.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The best thing I learned about when I was a Mormon was how to judge people.
You just did it. It just did it now. You didn't even know you were doing it. Oh, they don't have garments on. What's wrong? What are they doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you realize, why Jesus would never think like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
This isn't good.
Why would I learn that skill?
Anything else you want to talk about with your 90% before we wrap this up?
No. I think love. It's just so simple. It's so simple.
It really, yeah.
Treat every interaction with love.
I don't mean to make you feel bad for saying this, but you're an inspiration to me and a hero of mine. And I'm sorry if that makes you feel bad, but you are. And we talked about the community, like the podcast is making, and man, I love our relationship, and
it just is growing.
You're like twice my age. You're a female. You're in a wheelchair, but so much in common.
Yeah.
So much in common.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I was
thank
telling
you.
JD that listening to all these episodes, every one is worse than the next. It's just, I'm like, and every interview that you do, I tell JD, I love this guy so much. He's insightful and kind. And anyway, thank you. I'm so happy to have you as a friend now.
Oh yeah, I'll have to come check out your. Do you ever do like a farmer's market or like a show or?
I used to, but no, it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
It's too hard on me. It's too hard on JD.
Yeah.
You know, no. I sell most of my jewelry through Instagram, and I've got a really good following that I've got. I mostly do custom orders now, and I don't know, 9 to 12 months out on.
Oh wow.
I've got a lot of.
Wow. You're gonna be filling orders when you're dead. Like they're still gonna be
I
coming
know.
in. Like that's
I'm gonna
how.
have to will my orders to a friend.
Maybe when you die, it'll probably go up. The price will probably
Oh,
skyrocket.
probably.
Isn't that how it works? Like,
Yeah.
that's how it worked with Kobe Bryant's shoes, anyway.
There you go.
Okay. Stick around. I might have something in my car that we can enjoy.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on. Life's 10% what happens to you, and 90% how you respond to it.